Admiral stood at the observation deck of her ship and looked at the small blue planet below. Earth. She had watched this world for 15 years now. The humans living there had no idea that alien eyes studied their every move from the darkness of space. Her ship floated near Neptune, far enough to stay hidden but close enough to monitor everything. The hegemony had given her this boring assignment as punishment. Watching primitive species was not glorious work, but did her duty without complaint. She pressed a button and her assistant entered the room. "Send the monthly report," she said. "Same as always. The humans continue to fight among themselves. They have nuclear weapons pointed at each other. They pollute their own air and water. They will probably destroy themselves within 200 years. Her assistant nodded and left, sighed and returned to watching Earth. Sometimes she felt sad for these creatures. They were smart enough to reach their own moon but too stupid to stop killing each other. The hegemony had rules about species like this. Watch them, study them, never contact them, never help them. Let nature take its course. Far away on Earth in a coastal city called, a man named kissed his wife goodbye and went to work. His wife Sarah believed he worked at a boring government office that handled satellite data. She always complained that his job was too dull, would smile and agree with her. Yes, very dull indeed. But when arrived at his office and passed through 7 security checkpoints, his work became something else entirely. He walked into a massive underground room filled with screens and computers. Officers from 12 different countries worked side by side, speaking in quiet voices. Sat at his station and opened his secure channel. Today he would coordinate supply shipments to Shipyard 7, hidden inside an asteroid between Mars and Jupiter. 3,000 workers lived there in secret. Their families on Earth believed they worked on oil rigs or research stations. The truth was much bigger. "Shipyard 7 reports the carrier is 60% complete," said a voice in his earpiece. "They need more titanium." "Understood," replied, rerouting mining vessel to their position. This was humanity's greatest secret. For 60 years, every major nation had worked together on a single project. They built warships in hidden places across the solar system. They developed weapons that could tear through metal like paper. They trained soldiers for a war that might never come. And they did all of this in complete silence. The secret began in 1947 when a damaged alien ship crashed into the Pacific Ocean. A Korean fishing boat found the wreckage first. Inside, the dying pilot, barely alive, transmitted a final message. It took humans 20 years to decode that message. What they found changed everything. The message was a warning. A species called the Swarm had destroyed thousands of worlds across the galaxy. They consumed everything. They showed no mercy. They would return to this part of space eventually. And when they did, the so-called protectors of the galaxy would abandon any planet they considered worthless. Earth was considered very worthless indeed. The world's leaders made a choice that day. They would not panic their people. They would not beg the galaxy for help that would never come. Instead, they would prepare in secret. The Cold War became a perfect cover. Nations pretended to hate each other while secretly sharing scientists and resources. Nuclear weapons programs hid the development of far deadlier technology. Generation after generation kept the secret. Grandfathers told grandsons. Mothers told daughters. Millions of people knew the truth and never spoke a word of it to anyone outside the circle. Back on her ship near Neptune, Admiral received an urgent message. She read it 3 times because she could not believe the words. The Swarm had been spotted at the edge of the galaxy. Millions of ships moving towards civilized space. The nightmare that ended 10,000 years ago had returned. Her hands trembled as she sent the report to Hegemony Command. Within hours, panic spread through every alien world. Emergency meetings convened. Defense fleets mobilized. But everyone knew the terrible truth. The hegemony had grown soft during the long peace. Their ships were old. Their soldiers had never seen real combat. Received her new orders the next morning. All observation fleets would return to defend the core worlds. Earth and its primitive humans would be abandoned. No warning would be sent. No help would be offered. The hegemony had decided that some species were simply not worth saving. She looked at the blue planet one last time. Part of her wanted to break protocol and send a message. But what would she say? Sorry, but you're all going to die and we're not going to help. What good would that do? Her fleet turned away from Earth and jumped to faster-than-light speed. Admiral told herself she was just following orders. She told herself the humans would probably destroy themselves anyway. She told herself there was nothing she could do. But deep inside, she knew she was leaving billions of innocent beings to die. What did not know, what no alien had ever suspected, was that humanity had been watching them too. Hidden sensors tracked her fleet's departure. Encrypted messages flashed around the world in seconds. In the underground bunker beneath the mountains, Director read the report with steady hands. The aliens were running. The swarm was coming. The moment humanity had prepared for across 3 generations had finally arrived. She picked up her phone and spoke 4 words that would change the history of the galaxy. Begin Operation Rising Dawn. The bunker beneath the mountains had been built to survive nuclear war. Its walls were 3 meters thick. Its power came from reactors that could run for 100 years. But tonight, it served a different purpose. Representatives from every major nation sat around a massive table, their faces lit by holographic displays. Director stood at the head of the table. She was 60 years old with gray hair and calm eyes. Her father had worked on the first prototype warship. Her grandmother had helped decode the alien warning. This mission lived in her blood. The hegemony observation fleet has departed, she announced. They believe we are blind and helpless. They have no idea what we have built. An American general leaned forward. How long until the swarm reaches hegemony space? Approximately 6 weeks, replied. They will hit the outer colonies first, then the agricultural worlds, then the core planets. And Earth? Asked the Russian admiral. The swarm does not know we exist. The hegemony kept our location secret from the wider galaxy. They considered us too primitive to matter. Allowed herself a small smile. Their arrogance will save us, for now. In orbit around Jupiter's moon Europa, Captain stood on the bridge of the carrier. The ship was 2 kilometers long, painted black to blend with the darkness of space. It had never flown in open space. It had never fired its weapons in combat. But every system worked perfectly because 3 generations of engineers had made sure of that. Was 35 years old. He had trained his entire adult life for this moment. His crew of 8,000 had done the same. They came from every country on Earth, united by a secret that bound them closer than family. His tactical officer, Lieutenant, approached with "All weapon systems are online, Captain. The crew is ready." Nodded, was young, only 28, but she had graduated first in her class at the hidden naval academy beneath the sea of Japan. She had never known a world without this mission. None of them had. Chief Engineer called from the engine room. "Reactors are stable. We can maintain full combat speed for 72 hours. "Good," replied, "and our navigation?" Navigator looked up from her station. She was the oldest member of the bridge crew at 42, a quiet woman who had memorized star charts the way other people memorized songs. "I have plotted 17 possible routes to hegemony space. All of them avoid known sensor networks." Felt proud of his crew. They had waited so long for this day. Part of him had wondered if it would ever come. Part of him had hoped it never would. Back on Earth, Operation Rising Dawn spread like quiet fire. A young woman named received a message on her phone. She had worked as a barista for 3 years, making coffee and smiling at customers. Nobody knew she was actually a fighter pilot with 2,000 hours of simulator training. She closed her cafe early that night. Her customers assumed she had a family emergency. In truth, she drove to a small airport outside the city where a transport waited to take her to the hidden fleet. Professor received his message during a lecture. He apologized to his students and canceled class. They thought he looked worried about something. They had no idea that this gentle old man had designed the targeting computers that would guide humanity's missiles. A grandmother named Bora heard the coded phrase on her radio. She smiled and patted her grandson's head. "Grandma has to go on a little trip," she said. He did not know that 50 years ago, she had helped build the first working fusion reactor in a cave beneath the Himalayas. Across the world, ordinary people became extraordinary. Teachers became soldiers, farmers became technicians, shopkeepers became pilots. They had all known this day might come. They had prepared for it their entire lives. Fleet Admiral watched the reports come in from his flagship, the Dreadnought. It was the largest ship humanity had ever built, 5 kilometers long with weapons that could crack a planet's crust. He had commanded this vessel for 10 years, never once taking it beyond the hidden shipyards. Now he would lead it to war. "How many ships?" he asked his communications officer. 700 ready for immediate deployment, Admiral. Another 300 can launch within the week. Reserves will bring our total to 7,000. 7,000 warships, built in secret, crewed by people who had kept their silence across generations. It was the greatest achievement in human history, and the galaxy had no idea it existed. Opened a channel to all ships. His voice carried across the solar system, reaching every hidden vessel, every secret base, every soldier who had waited their entire life for this moment. "This is Fleet Admiral. For 60 years our ancestors worked in silence. They built what we now command. They sacrificed everything so that humanity would not face the darkness alone. Today their work is complete. Today we answer a call for help that was never sent. Today we show the galaxy that Earth is not a planet of primitives. We are the guardians they never expected. We are the army they never saw coming. Prepare for departure. We fly to war." Across the solar system, engines roared to life. Ships emerged from beneath oceans, from inside asteroids, from the shadows of moons. The sky filled with humanity's hidden armada. And the galaxy had no idea what was coming. Verdant Prime was a beautiful world. Green forests covered its surface. Blue oceans sparkled under twin suns. 3 billion people called it home. They grew food for dozens of other planets. They had never known war. They had never needed weapons. The swarm arrived on a Tuesday morning. Admiral watched the battle from her ship, stationed with the defense fleet. 400 hegemony vessels faced the enemy. They were proud ships with long histories. Their commanders had trained for decades. They believed they were ready. They were wrong. The swarm came like a black tide. Hundreds of thousands of ships, each one ugly and twisted, built only for destruction. They did not negotiate. They did not demand surrender. They simply attacked. The first hegemony ship exploded within 30 seconds. Then another. Then 10 more. Screamed orders at her crew, but nothing worked. Their weapons barely scratched the swarm vessels. Their shields failed against the endless bombardment. 6 hours later, it was over. 380 hegemony ships floated as burning wreckage. Verdant Prime had fallen silent. 3 billion people were gone, consumed by an enemy that felt no mercy and knew no fear. Ship limped away with 19 others. They were all that remained of the great defense fleet. Behind them, the swarm moved on to its next target. News of the defeat spread across the galaxy. Panic followed. The hegemony had believed their old treaties and ancient alliances would protect them. They had believed the swarm was just a story, a nightmare from the distant past. Now they knew the truth. The nightmare was real and it was hungry. Emergency orders reached every hegemony fleet. All ships would return to defend the core worlds. Nothing else mattered. Outer colonies were abandoned. Observation posts went dark. Species that had relied on hegemony protection suddenly found themselves alone. On Earth, Director watched the reports with cold focus. The swarm was even worse than the old warning had described. They moved faster, hit harder, and showed no weakness. This was not an enemy that could be reasoned with or frightened away. "How long until they reach the core worlds?" she asked. 3 weeks, her aide replied, "maybe less." Nodded slowly. "Then we have 3 weeks to cross half the galaxy and save people who left us to die." She opened a channel to Fleet Admiral. "The fleet is ready." "Ready and waiting, Director." "Then go, show them what humanity can do." The hidden Armada moved like ghosts through the darkness of space. They used fold drive technology that the hegemony believed impossible. Scientists on Earth had spent 30 years perfecting it in secret. It bent space itself, allowing ships to cross vast distances in hours instead of months. Captain stood on the bridge of the as stars streaked past the viewports. His crew worked with quiet efficiency. They had trained for this moment 1,000 times in simulators, but nothing could truly prepare them for real war. Lieutenant checked her weapons console again. All missile tubes loaded, energy batteries at full charge, point defense systems active. "Good," replied. "How are the engines?" "Running smooth, Captain. We can fight for days if we need to." Navigator plotted their course on her screen. "We will arrive at Axis Prime in 18 hours. That is the hegemony capital world. If it falls, the war is over." Looked at his crew. These people had become his family over the years. They had shared meals, celebrated birthdays, mourned losses together. Now they would fight together. Some of them would probably die together. "I want everyone to know something," he said quietly. "Whatever happens out there, I am proud of every single one of you. Our ancestors built this ship for us. They gave us this chance. We will not waste it." Across the fleet, similar conversations happened on every ship. Commanders spoke to their crews. Friends said things they had never said before. Everyone understood what was coming. They were flying toward the greatest battle in galactic history. Admiral retreated with the remains of the hegemony fleet to Axis Prime. Reinforcements arrived from every corner of civilized space. 6,000 ships gathered to make a final stand. It was the largest fleet the hegemony had ever assembled. Knew it would not be enough. She had seen the swarm up close. She had watched her friends die screaming. The enemy was too numerous, too relentless, too hungry. The hegemony had grown soft during the long peace. They had forgotten how to fight a real war. "How long until the swarm arrives?" she asked. 20 hours, her tactical officer replied. "Their advanced fleet numbers over 100,000 ships." Closed her eyes. 100,000 against 6,000. The math was simple. The hegemony would lose, Axis Prime would fall, billions more would die. She thought about Earth, the primitive planet she had abandoned. Those strange little creatures with their wars and their pollution. She had left them to die without even saying goodbye. Now she would die herself, and somehow that felt like justice. In the darkness between stars, humanity's Armada raced toward the battle. 700 ships in the first wave. Thousands more following behind. They carried weapons the galaxy had never seen and soldiers who had waited their entire lives for this moment. The sky above Axis Prime was about to split open. And everything was about to change. The Battle of Axis Prime began at dawn. The swarm emerged from darkness like a living storm. 100,000 ships blotted out the stars. They moved without formation, without order, just endless hunger given metal form. Their weapons fired before the hegemony could even react. Admiral watched her fleet die around her. Ships that had protected civilized space for centuries vanished in balls of fire. Crews that had never known defeat screamed their last breaths into cold vacuum. The hegemony formation broke within the first hour. Her own ship, the Eternal Vigil, took a direct hit. The bridge exploded around her. She flew across the room and hit the wall hard. When she opened her eyes, half her crew was dead. Smoke filled the air. Alarms screamed warnings about hull breaches and failing systems. "All power to engines," she gasped. "Get us out of here." "Engines are gone, Admiral," her helmsman replied, blood running down his face. "We are dead in space." Looked at the swarm was everywhere. Hegemony ships exploded by the dozens. The capital world of Axis Prime glowed with the light of orbital bombardment. Billions of innocent people waited below, hopping for a miracle that would never come. This was the end. The hegemony had failed. The galaxy would fall. Then the sky split open. A tear appeared in space itself, bright white against the blackness. Then another. Then 100 more. Ships poured through the rifts, ships unlike anything had ever seen. They were black and angular, covered with weapons that hummed with strange energy. They flew in perfect formation, moving as one deadly force. "What is that?" her tactical officer whispered. "Whose ships are those?" The answer came through every communication channel in the system. A calm male voice spoke in perfect hegemony standard language. "This is Fleet Admiral of the United Earth Defense Force. We are here to help. All hegemony vessels fall back and regroup. We will take the front line." Could not believe what she was hearing. Earth, the primitives, that was impossible. They had barely reached their own moon. They had no warships. They had no fold technology. This had to be a trick. But the ships were real, and they were attacking. The dreadnought led the charge, its massive guns firing beams of pure destruction. Each shot tore through 3 or 4 swarm vessels at once. Behind it, 700 more Earthships spread across the battlefield, engaging the enemy with terrible efficiency. On the bridge of the captain felt his ship shake as they entered combat. All batteries fire at will. Lieutenant worked her console with fierce concentration. Missiles launched from every tube. Energy weapons carved bright lines through enemy formations. The dance through the chaos, striking and moving, never staying in one place long enough to be targeted. "Enemy hive ship at bearing 370, called out. "It is controlling the swarm units in this sector." "Can we get there?" asked. "I can get us anywhere, Captain. Just point the way." They dove toward the hive ship. It was massive, 10 times larger than any Earth vessel, covered with smaller ships like parasites on a whale. Normal tactics would call for a careful approach, long-range bombardment, measured strikes. Did not believe in normal tactics. Full speed ahead. Prepare all forward weapons for a concentrated strike. "Captain, that will put us directly in their firing range." "I know, do it anyway." The scream toward the hive ship. Enemy fire filled the space around them. Shields flared and sparked. Metal groaned under the stress, but flew them through the storm with impossible skill, dodging shots that should have destroyed them. At point-blank range, fired everything. Missiles slammed into the hive ship's hull. Energy beams cut through vital systems. The massive vessel shuddered, then began to break apart. "Direct hit," shouted. "The hive ship is going down." Across the battlefield, swarm ships lost their coordination. They began to scatter, to hesitate, to fall into confusion. Human warships pressed the advantage, striking hard while the enemy reeled. Admiral watched from her crippled bridge, tears running down her face. These were the creatures she had abandoned. These were the primitives she had dismissed as worthless. They had come to save her anyway. "They are winning," her helmsman said in disbelief. "The humans are actually winning." The battle raged for 6 more hours. Human ships fell, their crews dying for a galaxy that had never known they existed. But for every human vessel lost, 50 swarm ships were destroyed. Earth's weapons were too powerful. Earth's tactics were too unpredictable. Earth's soldiers were too determined. When the last swarm vessel retreated into darkness, the survivors counted the cost. The hegemony had lost 4,000 ships. Humanity had lost 200. The enemy's advance fleet was shattered. But this was only the beginning. The true swarm invasion force was still coming. Millions of ships, enough to darken entire star systems. What had happened at Axis Prime was just the first battle of a very long war. Fleet Admiral looked at the debris field where so many had died. Human and alien alike, all of them soldiers who had stood against the darkness. He bowed his head in respect. "Send rescue teams for any survivors," he ordered. "All ships begin repairs. The next wave comes soon." And in the wreckage of the eternal vigil, Admiral finally understood. Humanity had been preparing for this moment while the galaxy ignored them. They had built an armada in secret while the hegemony grew lazy and weak. The primitives were not primitive at all. They were the saviors no one saw coming. 3 days after the Battle of Axis Prime, Admiral walked through the corridors of the... Her wounds had been treated by human doctors. Her life had been saved by human rescue teams. Now, she had been invited to meet the man who commanded the fleet that had saved her world. The ship amazed her. Everything was clean, efficient, and far more advanced than anything the hegemony had built. She passed human crew members who nodded politely but kept working. They did not stare at her like she was strange. They treated her like any other person. Fleet Admiral waited for her in his private quarters. He was older than she expected, with gray hair and kind eyes. He offered her tea, which she accepted gratefully. "You must have questions," he said. "Many," replied, "but I will start with the most important one. Why, we abandoned you. We left your planet to die without even a warning. Why did you come to save us?" Was quiet for a moment. He looked out the viewport at the stars. "Do you know the history of my species, Admiral? We have spent our entire existence fighting each other. Wars over land, wars over religion, wars over things so small we cannot even remember them. We have seen what extinction looks like. We have been both the killers and the victims." He turned to face her. "When we learned about the swarm, we had a choice. We could hide and hope they would pass us by. We could prepare only to defend ourselves, or we could become something greater, something that does not abandon the weak, something that stands for everyone, even those who do not stand for us." Felt shame burn in her chest. "We do not deserve your help." "Perhaps not, but deserving has nothing to do with it. My grandmother helped build the first reactor that powers this ship. She never asked if the galaxy deserved to be saved. She just wanted to give her a chance to make things right." Survivors from the hegemony fleet gathered on Axis Prime for an emergency council. Leaders from 12 species sat across the table from Director, who had arrived from Earth via fold ship. They offered everything: technology, resources, full alliance, anything humanity wanted. Listened patiently to their offers, then she shook her head. "We do not want your technology. We do not want your resources. We have spent 60 years building what we need. What we want is something else entirely." "Name it," the hegemony chancellor said. "Whatever you ask, we will provide. Let our ships fight beside yours. Let our soldiers stand with your soldiers. And when this war is over, let us build something new together. Something that does not abandon planets because they seem weak. Something that protects everyone, not just those who are useful." The council agreed without hesitation. For the first time in galactic history, humanity had a seat at the table, not as primitives to be studied, not as victims to be ignored, but as equals, as partners, as protectors. The captain gathered his crew for a moment of rest. They had fought bravely. They had lost friends. Now they faced an even greater battle ahead. Lieutenant sat in the mess hall, staring at her food without eating, sat across from her. "You did well out there," he said. 17 of my targeting solutions failed," she replied. "I should have done better." "You destroyed a hive ship with a direct assault that no simulator ever trained us for. Give yourself credit." Chief Engineer joined them, looking exhausted but satisfied. Engines are fully repaired. We can fight again whenever needed. Navigator arrived last, carrying cups of tea for everyone. I heard from command. The main swarm fleet will arrive in 2 weeks, 3 million ships. The number hung in the air like a death sentence. 3 million. Even with humanity's armada, those odds seemed impossible. Looked at his crew, the people who had become his family. Do you remember what Admiral said when we first launched? Our ancestors built this fleet for the survival of all thinking beings. Not just humans, not just Earth. Everyone. He stood and raised his cup. 3 million ships means 3 million chances to prove that he was right. We were born for this. Our parents were born for this. Our grandparents worked their entire lives so we could be here, right now, ready to fight. I do not know if we will win, but I know we will not run. I know we will not abandon anyone. And I know that whatever happens, we will face it together. His crew raised their cups in answer. Across the galaxy, reinforcements poured through fold space. Hidden reserves that humanity had kept secret for decades finally revealed themselves. Ships emerged from every corner of the solar system. The 700 became 7,000, then 17,000, then more. Director had one final surprise. Earth itself was protected by orbital platforms that could destroy entire fleets. Humanity's home would be safe, no matter what happened in distant space. But the weapons on those platforms could be removed. The shields could be lowered. Earth could send everything it had to the front lines. When she proposed this to the world's leaders, not a single one objected. We have hidden long enough, she announced to all humanity. Now we show the universe who we truly are. The sky above Axis Prime split open one final time. Human ships beyond counting poured through the rifts. Carriers and battleships, cruisers and destroyers, fighters and bombers, an armada that dwarfed anything the galaxy had ever seen. And at the front of the fleet, that led the way. Fleet Admiral stood on his bridge and looked at the darkness where the swarm would soon appear. Open a channel, he said, all ships. His voice carried across thousands of vessels, reaching millions of crew members who had waited their entire lives for this moment. Today we finish what our ancestors started. Today we prove that humanity does not hide from darkness. We charge into it, we light it on fire, and we show every creature in this galaxy that they are not alone. They were never alone. We were always here watching, waiting, preparing. And now we fight. For Earth. For the hegemony. For every world that ever felt abandoned. Today, the swarm learns what it means to face humanity united. The fleet moved forward as one. The final battle for the galaxy had begun. And this time, humanity would not be watching from the shadows. They would be leading the charge.